Chapter 15. Dawn and Relief. The pre-dawn sky was a dull smear of gray and violet, barely lighting the shattered world of the outpost. Smoke still curled from scorched corridors. Thermite puddles glimmered blackly, and the smell of burnt chitin, blood, and sweat hung thick over the compound. The survivors, 10 of them between engineers and soldiers including Reeve, Mara, and Lennox, moved like ghosts among the wreckage, dragging the wounded into the inner ring, checking barricades, readying what little ammunition remained. Every heartbeat was a drum of tension. Every shadow could conceal death. The creatures had learned, adapted, and now pressed with unrelenting intelligence. They probed, clawed, and forced the human line inward, compressing the survivors into the smallest possible defensive perimeter. Reeve crouched behind a twisted beam near the command platform, rifle slung but ready. His shoulder throbbed where a creature's claw had nicked him the night before. Mara was beside him, checking the final tripwire charges along the inner corridor, face streaked with soot and fatigue. Lennox knelt near a wounded corporal, tightening a tourniquet and loading his rifle in one fluid motion. "They've got us boxed," Lennox muttered. "Every corridor, every approach. They're pressing like a tide, and we're the last sandbar." "We make the sandbar count," Reeve said, scanning the dark ridges beyond the floodlights. "Inner rings solid. Tripwires, incendiaries, fallback positions. Everything's in place. We hold. That's all we do until the sun comes up." Mara's eyes flicked to the east ridge, where faint movement suggested the attackers were gathering for a coordinated assault. "They've learned patience. They're saving their strength for the kill," she said quietly. "Then we make the first kill count," Reeve replied. The first wave of the final assault came at the inner wall like a living hammer. 6-legged silhouettes leapt over rubble, claws scraping, armored plates glinting in the weak light. They moved with terrifying coordination, a tide of predators pressing on every corridor. The survivors opened fire, tracers streaking through smoke and dust. Grenades detonated in the hallways, fire licking around corners, shrapnel spraying the creatures, but they kept coming. Reeve fired from the command platform, picking out the heaviest forms, aiming for joints or gaps in their plates. One creature lunged through a doorway, talons snapping, and Lennox rolled beneath it, driving his rifle into its chest before finishing it with a short burst. Mara coordinated turret fire from above, sweeping corridors to catch anything moving through the smoke. The inner ring became a furnace. Every corridor was contested, every doorway a choke point. The survivors moved like cogs in a machine, exhausted but disciplined, buying precious seconds with every shot, every barricade, every trap. At one point, Reeve and Lennox were back-to-back in a corridor that smelled of scorched metal and blood. A hulking creature slammed into the wall beside them, the impact rattling the steel plates. Reeve fired, then rolled to the side as the creature lashed again. Lennox grabbed a fallen pipe, swung, and cracked the creature's leg joint, making it stumble into Reeve's line of fire. They didn't speak. There was no time. Only action. Only survival. The assault pressed on, hour after hour. Tripwires snagged attackers. Incendiaries turned narrow corridors into walls of fire, but the creatures adapted, learning and shifting with terrifying intelligence. They forced the survivors into the innermost section of the outpost, where every shot counted. Every missed round could mean death. Reeve caught Mara's eye across the command platform. "Ready?" he asked. "Always," she said, voice steady. "We hold here or we die. There's no other option." Lennox nodded, checking his ammo one last time. "Then let's make it count." The creatures surged through the final corridor, pressing the survivors into a corner. Reeve and Mara opened fire, tracers cutting through smoke. Lennox threw a grenade into the midst of the attackers, the explosion rocking the corridor. They staggered back, but the creatures pressed on, relentless, adaptive, intelligent. Blood, sweat, smoke, fire, and fear filled the air. The survivors fought with everything they had, muscles burning, lungs raw, adrenaline carrying them past exhaustion. Every second was measured in breaths, every shot a prayer. Then, from orbit, the first tremor of salvation arrived. A distant rumble vibrated through the valley, not from the creatures, not from the ground, but from above. Reeve's head snapped up. "That's it!" he shouted. "Hold the line! Relief is on the way!" A flash of light appeared over the horizon, followed by a concussive wave that shook the outpost. Orbital bombardment rained down, streaking through the darkness in controlled pulses. The creatures howled in terror and confusion as explosions rocked the ridges, turning the terrain into a shattered, smoking landscape. The survivors pressed the advantage, firing into the disoriented creatures, pushing them back into traps, hallways, and incinerated zones. Every shot was precise, every movement desperate but calculated. The tide began to turn. "Drop ships!" Lennox shouted, pointing toward the sky. Gunmetal silhouettes descended, slinging ropes and deploying fire suppression systems to cover the landing zones. Marines poured from the craft, engaging remaining attackers, cutting through the chaos with disciplined precision. Reeve, Mara, and Lennox fought their way to the landing platform, dragging wounded survivors along, firing at anything that moved. The creatures, battered by bombardment and now facing disciplined reinforcements, faltered. One by one, the survivors made it aboard the dropships. Reeve took the last glance at the outpost as the craft lifted, smoke and fire rising behind them. The valley was a field of ruin, but the surviving humans, the battered, bloodied, exhausted few, were alive. Mara slumped against him, breathing hard but steady. Lennox grinned despite the grime and cuts on his face, shoulder leaning against the railing of the dropship. "We made it," he said, voice hoarse but triumphant. "For now," Reeve replied, eyes scanning the horizon. Relief had arrived. The night was over, but the scars, in the outpost, in the valley, in their bodies and minds, would remain. As the dropship ascended into the sky, the first rays of true dawn broke across the ridges. Orbital flares streaked faintly, bathing the valley in a harsh, brilliant light. Below, the creatures retreated, their coordinated assault broken by fire from above and the sudden arrival of human reinforcements. Reeve, Mara, and Lennox exchanged a glance. Exhausted, battered, but alive. They had survived 10 days of hell on Sol 10B-007, and the sun was rising on a world that had tested them to their limits and failed to break them. There is always a story to be told out here in the frontier, as long as there is someone to listen, like, and subscribe, and join us again for more.